If your summer plan for training is, we'll cover it at the next staff meeting, you're not training. You're hoping consistency shows up on its own. This episode is about a different approach, 10 minutes a week that actually changes behavior because it's short, repeatable, and specific. If you can't train for an hour, train for 10 minutes every week. The time adds up.
Elevating childhood education, where leaders rise, children thrive, and your program becomes a legacy of excellence.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Elevating ECE. I am your host, Beatrice Hutcherson. And for the month of June, we are continuing with our theme of summer reset, training consistency, and a strong fall launch. And so last week we were together, we talked about summer operating systems. And today we're talking about micro training that sticks, 10 minutes a week to raise consistency. And so today you'll leave with a simple training structure that your team can repeat weekly. Focus, model, and drill. I'm always talking about systems. So we're going to talk about focus, model, and drill. And we're also going to leave with a completed 8-week micro training calendar together during our demonstration time. We will complete weeks 1 through 3. We'll also leave with a plug and play 10-minute huddle agenda you can reuse all summer long. And then you'll also leave with a menu of practice drills so you never wonder, what do we do for training? Let's talk about why summer training usually fails. Training fails in the summer for predictable reasons. They may be too long, or they may be too broad, right? We need better supervision, right? That's a very broad topic. Or they cannot be practiced or not be repeated, right? They may be trainings that we can't put into practice or that we can't repeat, right? Something that's not practical. And it often fails if it isn't connected to what you do in your rooms on a day-to-day basis, right? So it needs to be connected to reality, and it also needs to be practical. Micro training works because it's tiny, it's frequent, and it's practice. Now let's talk about what micro training is and what it isn't. Let's explore that together. So micro training is not a lecture, it's a shorter routine. The toolkit, and we're going to go to that in a moment, it defines it as 10-minute weekly sessions with a consistent 3-part structure. And so the structure includes that system I mentioned to you: focus, which is you'll do for 2 minutes, where you name the skill and the standard. Then you'll model it, which will give you 5 minutes, where you'll demonstrate or describe what it looks like. And then the drill portion of it is 3 minutes, will take 3 minutes. And it's the quick practice to build muscle memory. If you want consistency, you need muscle memory, not reminders. Now let's talk about what to train first in the summer. Summer priorities aren't random. They're tied to risk. So that's your time when you can talk about your regulatory items. You talk about ratios and coverage shifts, supervision positioning, active supervision, and your incident reporting and documentation, communication when schedules change, how we communicate to one another, transition cues and behavior de-escalation. So we're going to dive into it later, and we're going to start to build these areas together. We're going to build weeks 1 through 3 at least, so you'll see. But we're going to use ratio awareness, supervision positioning, and incident reporting in our sample. So before we get there, let's talk about, how do we keep this doable? How do we actualize this, right? It sounds wonderful in theory, but how do we actually do this when we're all so busy? If you lead this like a perfect trainer, you'll burn out, right? If you walk into this thinking that I have to do this like a master training, you've already failed. But you want to keep the same structure every week. Rotate who facilitates. You don't have to do it all on your own. use the drill library so you're not inventing training content. So we're going to dive in and we're going to do this together. And again, just using these as samples so that you would know how to do it, but you can modify it based on the needs of your program. And so you can follow along with me here, or you can also download your copy of the Summer Reset Toolkit. You'll see the link in the description box below. Get your own kit where you can download it and modify, and so you can work along with me in it. Or you can just watch and follow along and then go back and do your own, and remembering to modify it based on the needs of your program. And let me share my screen here so you are able to follow along. All right, so here we have the toolkit for the month of June, which is a summer reset for strong fall launch. And so each week we are covering one of the modules. So last week we did the summer operating system, and for the sake of today, we are doing the micro training that sticks. So let me just go down to where that is. So this is resource number 2. There we go. Micro training that sticks. And so each week you want to implement a micro training session that you could do in exactly 10 minutes. And so if you follow the structure that I just mentioned to you previously about doing your focus for 2 minutes, you name the skill and the standard being reinforced, and then you model it, which would take 5 minutes. So you demonstrate or you discuss what it looks like in practice. And then drill would only take 3 minutes, but that's when you allow them to practice. You give them a practice activity that it builds that muscle memory. And so when you have that component, when you have a drill, when they get an opportunity to actually engage and do something, it helps them with retaining the information. And so that is there as the reminder. And so our 8-week micro training calendar is what we're going to build together. So we're doing just weeks 1 through 3. All right. So our 10-minute training. So for week 1, we can do ratio awareness. And these are just some examples of what we can do. Ratio awareness, who's responsible when coverage changes? And then the practice drill. So remember, we're doing our few minutes, our 2 minutes where we are naming the focus, right? The topic, what we're talking about. And then we're going to spend 5 minutes really discussing it and really presenting it and really giving all of the information around it, right? So that's when we actually model we give the information and we model it. Yes. And then our drill there is that for we do a blind spot walk. So we identify 3 supervision blind spots in your room. So this is what you ask them to do. And you can even have them demonstrate it, which is what we're going to talk about next, right? So all right, so for week 1, right? So remember, these are the 10-minute trainings and the micro trainings, if you will. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spend 2 minutes identifying or naming the focus, what we're focusing on, and then the 5 minutes of modeling, right? Giving the information and really highlighting how we implement it and put it into practice. And then we have the last part, which is 3 minutes, which is the practice drill. So here we're going to just identify the training topic, right? Knowing that includes it's a total of 7 minutes because it includes us naming it and then giving all the information around it and modeling it. And so these are some examples, just examples. You can modify them however you choose based on what you are required to do. Based on your regulator, you may have other trainings that you need to do, but this is a process to follow so that you can keep them short and sweet, but also effective. So for week 1, the example here is ratio awareness. Who's responsible when coverage changes? And so you would talk about that and explain what the process is for that and model it. And then the practice drill would be a quick count drill. So staff count children in their assigned zone in under 60 seconds. So and have them actually practice it, right? So imagine you're in your classroom and count your children, right? So have them to do 60 seconds. They should be able to get how many children they have. For week 2, the example here is supervision positioning. Eyes on every child at all times. We call that active supervision. And so here, of course, you give the information, you name it, name the focus of it, give the regulation around it, give the information about it, model it, and then your practice drill here is that you have a blind spot walk. Have them identify 3 supervision blind spots in their room. So what does that mean? 3 areas in their room where they do not have the direct line of sight. Maybe there's a shelf that's in the way and you can't exactly see behind the shelf. Or sometimes there's a corner, right? Especially based on the layout of your classroom, you may have things that are in the way. Maybe a dramatic area, piece of furniture that's kind of out, and it creates a little like alcove, a little crevice where someone could go in and sneak and hide, right? So you want to make sure that there is direct line of sight to all areas of the classroom. And so you have them actually do that. Have them pretend they're in their classroom or have them go back to their classroom and do the practice drill, but have them practice it so it becomes part of that muscle memory. And then for week 3, we have incident reporting. What gets documented and when? And so you give the information around it, whatever your process is. For my agency, we have a process where every incident gets reported, right? But we have a 24-hour timeline to be able to report it, right? And then also we have different areas or different layers of command that we have to also give the information to in our tracking, right? And so for me, I would give that as, and give, of course, go more into depth about what the process is. And so you would do the same thing if you chose this, right? Talk about what your process is, model it. What do the regulations say about it? And then give them a practice drill. So give them a scenario practice. Staff complete the mock incident form together. Have them physically do the form. So come to the 10-minute micro training with your form, right? With the forms, and give them a form and give them a scenario. This is what happened. Now you document it on the incident report and then see how well they do. And then you can support as a group to make corrections or make adjustments where needed. And so I just did the first 3 with you, but you have up to 8 weeks here, so you can do other trainings. And so this is just something to be helpful. So it provides you with a way to get trainings in, because it's not always easy. At my program, we do designate time for the trainings, right? And so we do a little bit more than 10 minutes, right? We do like half-day sessions or a couple of hours throughout the summer months where we get all of our, regulatory items in. But if you're a person or if your program is really stressed with time and you don't have that type of time that you could take to do the trainings, use these micro trainings, because they really can help you at least address all the issues that you need to address, especially going back into the new school year. All those regulatory, all those best practice items, they'd be able to practice those and not just get the information, but also practice it so that you can start to build that muscle memory. And so this goes up to 8 weeks. So go through it and put in other trainings that would be more specific to your program, and that would help. And so what the goal would be is in your last week, in week 8, you can review, celebrate, and identify what's sticking, right? What from all of the trainings that you've done, the 7 trainings now, if you've done one each week, you can now you can test them and you can make it fun. You can have it be a little game, have it be some sort of maybe team competition where you find out what actually stuck from those micro trainings. What did they actually commit to memory from the trainings. And so you can give team shout outs, right? Each staff names one skill that they've improved, right? And so that is the activity there that they can do, right, to build that muscle, that practice drill to help them build that muscle memory, right? And so this is something that you want to also continue to do. Also, it's always good to follow up with them and have them give their feedback. And we a lot of times do a lot of trainings and it doesn't always stick, right? And so this just gives you like a snapshot of what you can do to make sure that they get all the information they need, but then also that we build that muscle memory, because often that's the place that's missing. We give them information, we give them lecture, right? But then they are not able to retain the information because it wasn't committed to the muscle memory, right? So you give them a way to engage with the information, give them a way to practice the information, then the chances increase as far as them being able to retain the information. All right, so this is the weekly staff huddle agenda for the 10-minute micro training, right? And so this is how it's laid out in the same structure that we talked about. For the first 2 minutes, we're talking about focus. For 5 minutes, we're talking about modeling, giving the information, modeling. And then in the last 3 minutes, we're doing that practice drill. And so this just outlines it, and then it tells you also how to close this week. Watch for one moment when you can apply this skill, right? So it gives them a charge, it gives them a follow-up item, an action item to actually implement what was taught to them during that week. So come back next week ready to share what you learned. And so, of course, you just put in the information there, the date, the facilitator, and also the topic. Because remember, you don't have to, as a leader, you do not have to be the only one that does these 10-minute trainings, right? You can also have others do these trainings as well. And then here we have the practice drill library. These are 30 drills for the summer training. And so the drill name here, the zone count, it gives that information. And we talked about that earlier. The blind spot scan, right? It gives that to you as well, but it also gives you the category, right? So it lets you know that which category it's a part of. So those two that we did were under the category of supervision. Right. And so also another one that we did not discuss, but would be the handoff check. And so it gives you what those look like. Also for under the area, the category of safety, you have emergency exit walk, the allergy alert check, and you also have incident form, speed fill, right? So we did the activity on that. We didn't do a speed fill, but we talked about allowing them time to actually fill out the incident reporting form. And so it also gives for all of these, it gives what those activities look like, right? Under communication, you have parent message draft, you have schedule change relay, and you have documentation spot check. And again, it tells you what those look like, how to put them into practice. And then lastly, behavior, your de-escalation script, your reinforcement statement, and your transition cue practice. And again, it tells you what each of those look like. And so that it concludes our tool for this week. It just gives you some good information that you're able to use and implement. And again, you can download this and modify it however you need to so that it meets the needs, the immediate needs of your program. And so again, that micro training is very, very helpful because it's tiny. It takes only the 10 minutes, right? It does not take a lot of time to have it completed. So it's tiny, it's frequent, right? Because now you're doing them every week. And then it's also practice. People learn the structure of it and they get an opportunity to also practice it so that they can commit it to memory. And so I hope that you found that helpful. That's your summer training system. One structure, one calendar with repeatable drills. Remember, summer consistency doesn't come from one big training day, but it comes from 10 minutes per week. If that's all you can spare, maybe you can spare a little bit more, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, whatever you could spare. But the idea here is to have it be focused, to follow the same structure of having it be focused, modeled and practiced, right? Because that practice piece really is instrumental in helping them to retain that information. So you want to have structure to your trainings, and then having the consistency of it, whatever you're able to dedicate or commit to it per week. They can look forward to every week. This is what we will be doing, whether it's for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever time you're able to allocate towards it. But then they understand the routine. We're talking about focus, model, and practice, right? And then we're talking about, we come into the next session knowing that we have to report out or share on how we implemented what we learned the last session, right? So it builds that structure where they already know it. So that means they go into that week after the training knowing I have to look for a place now to implement what I learned, because I'm going to have to report out on it next time, right? So it builds that kind of, it builds that structure and that system to your trainings. And then the implementation in their real life day-to-day just reinforces the retention of the information that they received. So remember, download your summer reset toolkit so that you can modify it and do whatever you need to do to it to make it helpful or instrumental in your program and for your planning. This week we used episode 2, the micro training. And so as we went through it together, you can also do it for yourself, make it specific again to your program. And do me a favor, comment training below and tell me what breaks down the most. What breaks you down the most? Is it ratios or supervision or documentation, incident reporting, communication? What area is there a struggle in that you're going to attack with your micro trainings this summer? Put it down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. And so that concludes our time together. And thank you so much for spending time and being a part of this discussion. We will be back again next week, right, with another topic as a part of our summer reset. And so we are excited about what's coming next. And so we do hope that you'll join us. And until we meet again, we want you to be well, and let's continue to elevate childhood education together.
Elevating childhood education, where leaders rise, children thrive, and your program becomes a legacy of excellence.